y'all, this is going to be a really quick and fast video because we're trying to beat the rain and get our fruit tree that just came yesterday in the mail into the ground planted. It is a Bareroot Auburn rubrum plum tree. It has been soaking in a pail of water for an hour. An hour to two is about right if you're planting a Bareroot fruit tree. Now, we are replacing a tree that died. It died because our irrigation sprinkler system, well not sprinkler, our irrigation system for our garden busted a hole in it.
Had a leak.
It had a huge leak. Anyway, it had such a leak it flooded. And I think we were out of town because it flooded for days and the plum tree just died. We gave it the rest of the summer, but it was definitely dead. So that's why we're replanting. Okay, so to dig your hole, you want to have it at a depth of the root system. You're going to be planting it about 2 inches above where the roots are, but below the node. You don't want to bury the node or you'll kill the tree. Width-wise, research has shown to go about 3 times as wide as your roots. And doing that, they're saying that it increases and speeds up the root development by as much as 4 times in a season as it would normally get. Because, you know, normally they tell you to do it twice as wide. Well, go 3 times as wide and see how it does for you. This is a bowl-shaped hole. So the next step is to create a mound. You can see how absolutely crummy our dirt is, how clayey it is. And you're going to want to mix, if you have real clay soils, you are going to want to mix 50-50 with some good compost. I'm actually using some of our reclaim mix out of our reclamation box. If you don't know what that is, you can look on the playlist and you'll find how we built our reclamation box and how we reuse our soil out of our rain gutter garden system. So you want to build a little cone, like a little volcano. Alright, I'm checking the roots to make sure none of them are dead or diseased. They all look really healthy and alive, so I don't need to trim any of them. Now, I'm going to place my root ball on top of my little volcano mound of dirt. And the next thing to do is to start backfilling. Mr. Farmer Brown's going to help me with that. Okay. Woo! Putting about a gallon of water in there so it will start to settle before we add in more dirt. All right, well, we finished making our 50-50 mix because we have such terrible clay soils. That's a recommendation, to make 50-50 mix with some quality compost. If you have great soil, you don't need to be adding any compost, but you know, look at your recommendations from your ag agency or from the place where you bought your Bareroot tree. Next step is to provide some kind of protection. We have these little tree and plant guards that snap together. And honestly, if you have dogs or critters that can get in your yard, it's a nice idea to add these for a year or two until they're very well established. Now, If you watched my pruning video, which was the previous one that I posted, I talked about the 3 common fruit tree training systems. For plum trees, you want the open vase system. And right now is the time to do the pruning. It's pretty drastic looking, but I'm going to show you what we need to do. First, we look at our main leader, which obviously is this one that's going way up here. And I want to look for either buds or 4 existing lateral branches that will act as the scaffolding. And if you remember from the video, if you look from a bird's eye view, you're really ideally wanting your scaffolds to be at 12, 3, 6, and 9. So starting from the bottom here, I have this little stumpy baby. Here's one. If I called this 12, this one would be 3. That one would be 6. And that one would be 9. They're all in the 4 quadrants. They're not stacked on top of each other. So all that part is good. So the first thing I'm going to do, since I've picked my 4 scaffolds, is to label them. Best thing to do is to tie a string around them, because it's really hard and sometimes to see which ones you were picking, and you don't want to make a mistake and cut your good one off. Okay, they're marked. Now I'm looking at the angles, which is really important. Remember, you want it to be between a 45 and a 60 degree angle. Anything less than 45 or greater than 60 is going to be a weak limb. It can break under the weight of heavy fruit or snow. This one is nice. It is a 45. So is this one. This one is too. This one is not quite. So I'm going to show you how to do a real easy spreader after we get our leader cut. Now with the open vase system, you want your main trunk, your main leader, to be around 24 inches off the ground, or somewhere between your knee and your waist. If I look at my yardstick, 24 is right in here. And I'm going to be cutting just a hair above that. So, right here is my uppermost scaffolding branch. So I'm going to make a cut. Got a nice angled cut so the water will roll off and not penetrate into the stem. Next thing is to do our header cuts on the scaffolding branches. This will require me to be able to see a little closer. If you'll remember from the video, a heading cut is a cut just directly above an outward facing bud. You want an outward facing bud because that's where it will grow out of. If you pick an inward facing bud, then it's going to come back inward toward the tree, which defeats the purpose of the open center. So, looking at this, you know, I could say, well, why cut it at all? Well, you want branching. You want 3 to 4 tiers off of each of these scaffolding branches. So I'm going to pick an outward facing bud and cut directly above it. Outward facing bud, directly above it. Outward bud, directly above it. And this, see, this is even broken. It came that way. So it would have to be fixed anyway. Plus it's starting to go way up and curvy. Really don't want that. So I'm going to come way down here for an outward facing bud. This one I really like because it's kind of going more that direction, which will kind of help fill in this space right here, because this is a little bit close to this one. So right there. Now, if you remember, thinning cuts. Thinning cuts are where you're cutting it completely back to the either the scaffold branch or to the trunk. Right now we don't have anything to cut off the scaffolding branches, but we do off this trunk. So I'm going to cut not through the collar, but right at the collar. That was a little, I left a little too much of a stub. Remember, I talked about that too, so I'm going to cut it just a tiny bit closer. All right, last thing is the spreader. In the previous video where I used the spreader on the plum tree, the branches were too big. Mr. Farmer Brown is showing you. In that instance, I use a burlap sling so I wouldn't girdle the branch, tied with some poly twine to a rock. Now, because I've cut my stem as short as I did, I'll see if this is going to work. If not, I may have to use the burlap. Basically, you can use a clothespin. This ideally would have been better if I would have had a little bit more stem to push against it, but I don't. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and add another little burlap sling to this with a small little rock to weigh it down, and over the course of the season it will grow to that angle and be a perfect 45. Well, that's it, folks. I took my clothespin off and went ahead and used a burlap sling with a rock, and now it looks really mighty fine. At this point, you would want to gently water it in, a gallon at a time, around 4 to 5 gallons. We'll probably add just another gallon of water to this one because we're supposed to have rain for the next 5 days or so. I'm surprised we beat the rain now. So that will be it. Have fun planting your Bareroot fruit tree, and bye, and have a good one.